Welcome back to the podcast, listeners. We're back today with our third version of the podcast, second real one here. Got a few scores around the league. First off, we can start out with some soccer. The El Clasico today, 2-2 draw. Messi and Ronaldo both scoring, but ends in a draw. Didn't really impact anything. Barcelona's got the league locked up. We got some weird stuff going on in the NHL. Some dudes licking some other guys' faces. Some weird stuff going on. But then we're in the NBA, and you got some exciting games, but ultimately not too many exciting series. You got the Rockets win the day, as well as the Warriors winning handily, and then LeBron hitting the game winner Saturday, coming out to you guys. And then we also have the 76ers just choking one away late. That gets us back into the NBA discussion. I want to know who you guys have in the NBA Finals and who you think is going to be winning it all in the NBA Finals, and I'll turn it over to John.
Yeah, it was a big weekend this weekend. I thought the games were going to be close. Obviously, New Orleans didn't pull it out and didn't get a lot of help from the refs, but an exciting game tonight with Houston. Donovan Mitchell played pretty well. Gobert played pretty well, but ultimately Chris Paul was just too much in the pick and roll. It's pretty easy to see he just eats him up on the pick and roll. Gobert doesn't come up, and it's just the whole game he's eating him up. So that was not, like you said, not too fun a series. LeBron basically ripping the hearts out of Toronto fans and players again, as happens every year. If you guys are also interested, if you don't have time to sit on YouTube, you want to listen to the podcast on the go, there will be an iTunes link in the description for YouTube. So if you want to go ahead and listen to it on iTunes, if you're not busy, don't have a full hour, just on the go, whether you're working out, that will be available as well when we upload it to YouTube.
For sure. Now we can head into a little bit of each series. Let's just start out with the most recent game. We'll go to the Rockets Jazz. Not going to lie, for those first two games in Houston, the Jazz pulling one away, heading back to Utah. I thought this might actually turn into a decent competitive series, maybe going 6, possibly 7, but Houston's kind of just dominated. But this brings me to a question. Just gonna give you a little bit trivia here right now. You ready for this?
I'm ready. Yeah.
All right. So you already know about all the foul calls and stuff with James Harden. If you would have to say, who are some of your top 5 people you think that get to the free throw line the most?
Got to be Harden. LeBron's got to be up there for sure. I'm assuming Westbrook is probably, if not top 5, he's got to be right outside the top 5. There's really, I'm sure KD is up there as well, and Anthony Davis would probably be my next guess. You got something in front of you you're not showing me?
Yep.
Not telling me about?
I got the top 5 in the last 6 seasons. You ready for this?
Ooh, I'm ready. Okay.
Yeah. Number 5 is LeBron James at 3,200 free throws.
Ooh, okay.
Number 4 is Boogie Cousins, a little over 3,200.
Oh.
Then we got DeMar DeRozan, number 3, 3,350 free throws. Number 2 is Russell Westbrook at 3,501 free throws. And leading the pack by more than 1,000 is James Harden at 4,726 free throws.
Not even a surprise.
This series you see a lot. I don't even know. For one, you see a lot of, which I'll get into later, some of the officiating in the series, calling some techs on Chris Paul late in the last 30 seconds. I saw that one. That made no sense. But then also Donovan Mitchell and Capella. I'm not sure what that was. A little trash talk. Not really sure what they're going. But this goes to show that Donovan Mitchell guarding James Harden. How is James Harden just taking over the series, and Chris Paul for that matter, going in?
Well, it's so James Harden makes it look easy on the offensive end, no matter who's guarding him. I mean, people like to complain about how often he gets in the free throw line, but I mean, he just knows how to sell it. He knows how to get into that contact, and he knows how to finish through contact. So, I mean, that's a big part of his game. He knows it. The defense knows it. So, I mean, if the defense can't do anything about it, keep exploiting it, And like I said earlier, Chris Paul with the pick and roll game, he's basically been a master of that his whole career. But watching Gobert chill in the paint, not being able to come up, whether it's a good thing that he does or not, Chris Paul's going to hit that mid-range jumper the whole game. He's going to take that every time. He's going to make it majority of the time. And like you said, Donovan Mitchell, Harden, they put a few people on him throughout the game, but honestly, I'm not sure there's anyone that's going to guard Harden one-on-one in this league. He's just so crafty. He's so quick. And whether he travels all the time like every other NBA player, it's just not a whole lot you can do about about his handles and his finishing. It's actually quite impressive that he does it game by game.
You got Houston up 3-1 this series. The only thing I could even see, I mean, if Utah can steal one in Houston and bring it back to Utah, maybe they could force 7 games. I don't even see them winning Game 5, but
Yeah.
I'll ask your opinion after. I think the only way they can win Game 5 is if Donovan Mitchell gets hot. You saw the only reason they won Game 2 it was, I believe, is because Joe Engel scored, like 27, I believe, and Crowder was hitting some shots and stuff, but Donovan Mitchell's just going to have to play well, but I mean, he's a rookie and obviously hasn't been in this playoff scenario. Once a team gets to see you 4, 5, 6 times, they're going to really figure out what you do. What can Utah really do to steal a couple of games and maybe force a Game 7?
Like you mentioned, a couple of those guys, generally they don't really. A few games ago, it might have been Game 2. Game 3, Alec Burks really, really played well. He had a great scoring outburst, and losing Ricky Rubio, while I didn't see it as a big deal coming in, you can tell him running the offense. There's a big difference between him and Exum. And Exum even going down earlier in this game, you hope for the best in that situation, considering his injury history. But it's got to be Jay Crowder, Derek Favors, Alec Burks. My apologies. Those guys, those type of guys, they got to step up. They got to put some scoring in because simply, I mean, Houston scores and scores and scores, but what nobody talks about is their defense. Their defense is really at an elite level this year. They've been playing so well on both ends, and that's not something a lot of analysts or teams talk about, but they've got to get scoring from the role players. Derek Favors has got to play well because when he plays well, the team usually follows. So I think that's very important for them to win the series. Like you said, I don't see him even winning Game 5, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. I believe Game 5 is probably over with. I think Chris Paul and James Harden slipped up in one game in Minnesota. I think they kind of realized if they have a letdown like that, they got to come back and can't really mess around. They even had one in Houston this time. I don't think they're going to mess around in Game 5. Probably take it right to Utah, who probably going into Houston is already not thinking too highly of themselves. But
Mm-hmm.
that's going to take us right into the Warriors-Pelican series. A couple of the first games in Golden State kind of got ugly. I mean, Game 2 was kind of competitive. Game 3, I mean, half these games, the winner, it hasn't been very competitive at all. I think Golden State wins the
Mm-hmm.
first game by like 20 plus. Second game, maybe by like 10 or so, somewhere around there. But then Game 3, it reversed. Pelicans win by like 20. And then back again, Game 4, Warriors win by 20 plus. This series is probably also all but over. No DeMarcus Cousins, which might make this a little bit more interesting, considering the height for Golden State's bigs, really, because you got Draymond in there guarding the brow and anything like that. But one thing I've noticed is New Orleans is not going to win the series if you have Nikola Mirotic on KD. You saw that in Game 4 where he just kind of took
Mm-hmm.
over. Same question as we have for the Jazz. Is there anything that New Orleans can do to get themselves back in the series?
Honestly, I'm not sure there's really anything you can do. I think, like you mentioned, Boogie Cousins would be a massive addition to this series. I'm not sure Mirotic guarding KD is a great idea. I'm not sure who else they even put on him, but Mirotic is when he gets one-on-one with KD, he gets cooked. He can't keep up with him. He really can't guard him anywhere. And him scoring, like 7-10 points the other night, he's just not, that's not going to do it for the Pelicans. So I guess I'm not sure. I don't see anything happening for them to be able to pull this one off. I think it goes to Game 6, best case scenario for the Pelicans. The Warriors just have too much going on offense, especially with Curry back and whether he's shooting well or not. If he's not shooting well, Clay's going to be shooting well. And of course, we're due for a Draymond Green blow off here coming up. So I don't see the Pelicans taking this one at all.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that's probably over in Game 5. Pelicans had to win both at home. They needed to steal one of the first 2 games, but it's just a little too much when you got Steph, Clay, KD, Draymond playing his role and just really coming out like they can. So I guess we could play the what if game since we do this every week. What if we see a Rockets versus Golden State right now, considering everybody's healthy, not
Mm-hmm.
impacting anything else? What do you got in the Western Conference Finals, Rockets Warriors?
I think this one goes 7 either way. I mean, it's going to be, I think with this playoffs, not a lot of people are talking about it, at least from what I'm seeing. Home court advantage is a massive deal. Home court advantage has really played a part in this entire playoffs. First round, second round here. It's just, I think, I think Golden State is going to have a tough time, but I also see it being easier for them to take one in Houston rather than Houston taking one in Golden State. Harden is the MVP this year, in my opinion. I don't think that's really a question, but I just still don't see them having the same output to keep up with Golden State. The playoffs and the regular season are just two totally different scenarios. Everyone plays a lot different. The schemes are a lot different. The coaching is different. Physicality, all of that. I see Golden State still taking it. I really don't see how Golden State doesn't take it all the way to the finals this year, but I think it'll be a 7-game series regardless. I like Golden State better in Houston than Houston and Golden State.
I'm going to go. I've seen, maybe this is just me seeing the Warriors kind of take it to the Pelicans a little too much, but I think I'm just going to go with it. I don't trust CP3 and James Harden in the playoffs yet. I mean, maybe they pull it out this year, but I'm going to go Warriors in 5, actually. Quick series going right to the title game. That's just how I see it, but that heads us over to the East. This one's going to be painful if you are a Raptors fan. Cavs, Raptors, I mean, it's just the same story, just a different year. LeBron James being LeBron James against Toronto. It's just it's turned into the fact that it's now LeBronto now. I mean, that's just disrespectful in itself. But what have you seen from this series from not only LeBron but the Cavs in general?
I don't know what happened. I honestly, like you said, just LeBron owns Toronto. I don't know what happened to him. They're just mentally weak around him. They go back to their normal just ISO ball, even though they haven't really played that all year. Their defense doesn't look nearly as good as it did in the regular season. LeBron's clearly unstoppable, especially when he's playing in the post. Not a lot of people are going to contain him. So I don't expect Toronto to be holding LeBron, especially when he's going off for 30, 40 every single night in these playoffs. But they're role players. I mean, Van Vliet really hasn't played as well as he did during the regular season. It was a good first round for him, but I think this one's over in 4, unfortunately, especially recently with the role players really stepping up for the Cavs. I think they collectively have played better as a team in the second round than they did in the first round. Maybe that's fool's gold just because Toronto's a little out of their head here playing Cleveland. But yeah, LeBron's living rent free in all of Toronto's heads, and I think Drake's included in there.
Yeah, this was definitely over in 4. Just, I don't know. I mean, first we can talk about DeMar DeRozan getting benched for the last, I don't remember what it was, 14 minutes of that game 3. I mean, obviously he's struggling, but he's your best player, and you almost feel like if you're going to lose, you're losing with your best guy out there. And I mean, maybe Lowry's satisfied, scored, like 27 or something in game 3. So maybe he's satisfied, isn't even really, I mean, obviously they're going to try to win in game 4, but I feel like once things go south, and I think it's just going to get ugly. But it really all kind of changed once Toronto went, like 3 for 18 in the last 5 minutes and overtime that game 1. If they win game 1, they know they're in that series. Maybe they lose game 2, but they prove themselves like they can beat LeBron. But once you lose that one, all your confidence is gone. And that whole series it's just been LeBron going in. And like you said, Toronto just still doesn't know how to do anything with LeBron. And if I'm Toronto, you got to make someone else beat you. I mean, obviously the role players have kind of stepped up, but I'm not putting, I mean, don't get me wrong, OG is a great defender and he's playing very well from a rookie, but I'm not going with a rookie in his first playoffs one-on-one with LeBron, not Pascal, Siakam one-on-one with him. You gotta make someone else beat you. If JR scored 25 points all series a game, if he's the one beating me, then I'll take that other than LeBron scoring 40 a game beating me. But it's just LeBron being LeBron, and they're going to win that in 4, which takes us to the other side, which has been something completely reversed. No Kyrie, no Gordon Hayward. I thought this was going to be 76ers. Maybe go 7 just because of Brad Stevens, but thought it might be 5 or 6 even for 76ers. But wow, was everything just wrong? What have you seen from this series?
Man, the Celtics, I mean, they collectively play so great as a team, whether that's credit to Brad Stevens or the young players just stepping up without Kyrie. They defensively, all of it, they play so well as a team. Terry Rozier's obviously stepped up, as everybody who's watched the games has seen. He runs the points so well, and Danny Ainge looks like a genius keeping him after so many years. You know, I think Philadelphia might get another one, and this one might be 1 in 5, but I can't see him coming back from 3-0, especially Joel Embiid somehow. After all of his trash talk and all of his Twitter talk, all of that, he's getting exposed on defense. I mean, he really is. I don't know if you saw Jason Tatum almost absolutely yam on him and talk a little shit to him, but that's the kind of stuff that's going to take him down. I mean, he just hasn't been playing up to the defensive mindset that he has been all season, and I think Boston's really surprised me. Al Horford has really surprised me. He was a good player, but he's led this team without Kyrie. He's taken that veteran presence, and he's really given it to these young guys. Jason Tatum, unbelievable rookie, probably the most consistent rookie in the playoffs so far. Maybe Donovan Mitchell, but that's not really an argument we need to have. It's just I'm impressed. I'm really impressed. I'll take him in 5.
This Celtics team has been crazy. I mean, Brad Stevens, you can't say enough about him. Been absolutely phenomenal. After the timeout calls and everything, and you've seen just everyone kind of step up. Rozier doing his part. Al Horford is playing. It's absolutely crazy. Going into the series, I just saw Embiid scoring 25, having his couple 30-point games against. I mean, Al Horford. I mean, when you think Al Horford, you see a productive dude. I mean, just a bigger guy, kind of slow, does what he needs to do. But then you see him guard Joel Embiid, and he's just making plays, and it's crazy. I mean, Rozier having a great series, kind of just proving his own. I mean, once Kyrie comes back, obviously Rozier's going to go to that little lesser role, but I don't know. He might want to look for an expanded role somewhere. Maybe not yet. Maybe he still needs to prove himself. But I mean, I think he's already starting to do that in the playoffs. So I don't know. I mean, something about the 76ers you just have to question. I mean, I don't know if it's just been Brad Stevens kind of figuring out Ben Simmons, or if maybe the spotlight's getting to Ben Simmons. Not quite sure. He had a better game in Game 3, but that's a couple of questionable decisions from him, a couple too many lazy turnovers. I mean, just some things that they're doing, and I hate. I mean, it might just seem like Brad Stevens is out coaching Brett Brown, which, I mean, I like Brett Brown as a coach. He's a very solid coach, but I mean, it just seems that's the way it's been this series. And then Embiid, I mean, like you said, that's just kind of who he is. He talks a lot. I mean, trust the process and everything. I mean, if that gets people going, gets the crowd behind him, I mean, I love it. But as the more you say those kind of things, the more your opponents are going to take that. And I mean, like you said, once something happens to you, like Jason Tatum and everything like that, you're gonna get it. You're gonna get it back for sure. And that's kind of happened so far this series. So I agree. I think Philadelphia might steal Game 4, but Game 5 back in Boston, that's probably going to be the end of the series. Which that's going to take us to the what if you have. I mean, I think the Celtics obviously win that series and maybe 4, but probably 5, and then the Cavs obviously. I think that one's definitely in 4. Who do you have in the Eastern Conference Finals if it's Cavs Celtics?
I'm going to take the Cavs for sure. I think, especially if the rest of the team besides LeBron is going to play this well. I mean, they're definitely. When they get to the finals, that's a totally different story in a Western Conference, whoever makes it out of there. But I think when he goes up against Boston, I'm going to say it's probably a 5-game series there. He's going to continue his hot streak. He's going to continue to be aggressive. He's going to continue to play in the post. And I'm surprised he doesn't do that more often because really I'm not sure there's anyone that can guard him in the post. I think Boston's a little more well-rounded than Philadelphia, as they're showing. I didn't think they had enough star power to get past, but their defense is going to be stifling for the rest of the Cavs team, but I'm not sure they can really make this much of a series. I think especially if LeBron wins a couple early ones in Boston, this one will be over quickly.
Yeah, I see the Cavs getting back to the NBA Finals. I see this one probably going 6. I mean, Celtics, I don't know, Brad Stevens is just a good coach, and they play well together. I see him probably getting a couple of games, especially in Boston, but I don't see him winning in Cleveland. I don't see him having enough to really get past LeBron, like you said. So that gives to a Warriors Cavs, but I mean, we'll have another week or so to talk about that one before we go in about the NBA Finals. But this kind of gets us to more of teams and their personal styles other than playoffs. So you see Paul George is not coming back. I mean, after that playoffs and everything that happened, I wouldn't be back either. I don't blame him whatsoever. But I guess I can ask you right now, who or where do you think that Paul George is going?
It's tough. You know, a lot of people like to talk about the Lakers, and I'm not really sure about that. I think they have a nice young core, but it's clear he wants to win a championship. He's not an old guy by any means. He's still pretty young, but to be committed to a team, he can't just jump around. It's going to make it hard for teams to want him if he's jumping around from team to team every year. So I'm not sure. I think the Lakers got to be the front runner now, but I'm not sure that's going to be the final spot. I guess I'm not sure a lot of the places have the cap room for him. I'm sure he's probably going to be getting close to a max deal. I'm not sure he's going to be taking anything less, but I'll stay safe with the Lakers now. But if it's something as crazy as somehow going to Boston or somewhere else in the West, I'm honestly I think he's going to try to go to a championship contender before he does anything like nice weather with LA or anything like that. But I guess we'll see. I'm sure San Antonio would be open, which is crazy to say because I can't envision him going to San Antonio. But if they trade away Kawhi, that's not a bad spot. That's definitely not a bad spot to play for Pop in the West.
Yeah, I think I could still see him in LA, but obviously when you're a player of that kind of caliber, you want to go to a contender right away. And I mean, maybe there's just something we don't know. Maybe LeBron obviously does a ton of recruiting. Maybe he's talked to somebody like that in his free time. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, obviously these players talk. I could definitely see him playing with LeBron, whether it's even in Cleveland and you do some sort of sign and trade or something like that, or maybe he wants
Interesting.
to follow him somewhere. I'm not sure. Maybe LeBron's going to LA. So many possibilities, but there's no way he's going to go to the Lakers if the Lakers haven't guaranteed that they're going after like Kawhi or Clay in a couple of
Yep.
years. But I don't even know if Paul George doesn't want to wait a year for guys around him to develop. I mean, he had his chance at the playoffs with the Thunder. He's not going to leave that situation, which obviously wasn't a great one, just to go to spend a year outside of the playoffs again. So, not sure where he
Yep.
was going either, but we're going to stay within the Thunder. Billy Donovan coming back. I know you said before that you didn't really like him there in OKC. You think there's any way he can do something different with all this star power around him? I mean, obviously things are just going to get worse for him because Melo's coming back for that 28 mil no matter what. I mean, I know you'll talk about this later in a new segment, but is there something he can do without having so much star power? Maybe he's better like that, or what do you see him doing in the future?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have too many high hopes, especially if they could get lucky and Melo for some reason opts out. He seems pretty selfish at this point, so I'm not sure he's doing anything but taking that big paycheck. I think it's going to be a rough season for the Thunder. It depends on what the rest of the Western Conference does, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they don't end up making the playoffs next year. They're going to have a tough squad, not a lot of depth again. It's just going to be a tough year. I don't see Billy Donovan making it out of next year. I don't even agree with him making it through this year, but they made that decision. They're sticking with him. It'll be interesting to see if they end up giving him a new deal at some point soon, or they're waiting to wait and see. But next year's a pretty bad year to wait and see for a coach like that. I think he belongs in the college ranks again for a little bit. He just doesn't seem to adapt well to the stars, and I don't. His offensive sets looked pretty rubbish sometimes. So I think he goes back to the college ranks pretty soon. But I guess we'll wait and see if he gets fired before he does that or leaves on his own accord.
Yeah, I think if he gets halfway through next season and they're getting not playing too well, obviously Russ is going to leave, so trading like your team for assets isn't really a possibility with that team. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
probably not going to trade Steven Adams. So I don't really know what everybody will take for him, but I wouldn't trade him, keep him with Russ. But then
Mm-hmm.
Melo, I'm sure is not just going to have this breakout year again or anything like that. So things get ugly. I could definitely see him definitely on his way out halfway through the year or maybe before that because Russ isn't going to want to be sitting at home watching the playoffs like he is right now. Obviously, though, he got kicked out in
Mm-hmm.
the first round, had his chance, but he's definitely not going to be one to sit around and watch everyone else ball. He just didn't have the team around him do anything, so we'll see about that. But that is mostly all about the Thunder that I can think of. I mean, Melo's going to come back, I feel like, and you'll talk more about them later before we get deeper into things. I mean, real fast though, because I know you'll also touch on this in a little bit. What do you think of the David Fizdale signing?
I liked it. I mean, I couldn't see them going any worse or any better there. I like Mark Jackson personally, but I don't specifically like him a lot more than Fizdale. I think Fizdale was a safe hire. He was a good hire. Players seem to like him from the past, even players that don't even play with him. He's kind of a no BS in the media type of coach, so I think he's going to fit well, and I think he's going to fit well in New York. I guess I personally don't really like Dolan, so James Dolan. So if he's still up there at the head of the Knicks, I don't see him going too far as it is. So I think you got to cut ties there. Well, it remains to be seen what they do there. But as far as just Fizdale, I like him. I like him there. Couldn't have done a lot better than that.
That's about all I can think of. I mean, you'll talk more about the Knicks and the Thunder in a minute, but real fast, since I mean we
Mm-hmm.
talked most about the current NBA teams. What about we're going to talk about the NBA draft, as it comes up closer and closer, but Do you have I can give my top five real fast. I have a top five in the NBA draft prospects. I would say right now my number one, without a doubt, I think going to be the best player is Marvin Bagley. I mean, I know there's some centers out
Hmm.
there that are pretty dominant, and they'll definitely be my top five. But Marvin Bagley, I think, is really good, all around player, can do it all. And then I'd say my second best is probably going to go to DeAndre Ayton. I mean, he's just an
Hmm.
animal. I don't know. I don't really like the way Arizona kind of coaches, especially in the big games. So I'm not sure that he was used the best of his abilities. And you can guard a big in the NCAA. You can definitely
Yep.
stop a big from doing anything. But in the NBA, it's much harder. I'd say my third is probably Jaren Jackson, just because of the potential. Long, can kind of do it all as
Hmm.
well, step out if he needs to. So I like him quite a bit. I'd say my number four, though, which may surprise some people, but I just see him being a great guard in the NBA, is Colin Sexton. I think he is
Mm.
miles better than Trey Young. I mean, Trey Young I still think could be great because he can just shoot the ball the way he does, but I don't know. Sexton's just more physical, bigger, takes care of the ball better, just seems more of an NBA ready kind of point guard. I mean, maybe Trey Young proves me wrong and goes to someone like the Magic or somebody early, but we'll talk about all like where people should go in the future, but maybe go somewhere like that and just able to do what he
Hmm.
can do and turn into not really Steph, but someone like Steph. That's what he wants, can shoot it from anywhere. But then I'd say rounding out my top five is probably Mo Bamba, maybe Michael Porter Jr. I've never seen a
Hmm.
Michael Porter Jr. healthy, so not quite sure what he can really be. I know he is a beast in high school, but so are a lot of people. Didn't really get to see him against top
Yep.
competition. So I'm gonna go with Mo Bamba, even though he's had his injury woes as well. So I don't know. I think he rounds out top five just
Hmm.
because of what he could be. So over to you.
Yeah, it seems to be a very center heavy, forward heavy draft this year. So I think I like DeAndre Ayton a lot, number one. I like him. He just seems to have it all. He's so strong. He's so massive. He even has a little bit of a jump shot, which is insane for someone his size. Sheer strength. It's truly amazing. So I think he's a safe pick at number one. I really like Jaren Jackson at number two. I like his versatility a lot. He's also pretty big, but he's pretty he can be finessed when he wants to. He can defend really well. I like him at number two, and Marvin Bagley. I really like him at three. He seems to be pretty versatile, whether he can play the center or the forward position. He can shoot it a little bit. He's insane at rebounding. He's just physical, and he really, when he gets to play and when he gets to really setting himself into the game and not kind of being lazy on the perimeter, he really can take over when he wants to. And we saw that happen a few times in the regular season. So I like him there. Number four, I like Mo Bamba as well. He's not big on his offensive game. He's not out there shooting fadeaway jumpers or post hooks or anything, but he's a fantastic defender, probably the best defender in the draft, at least in the top 10 that I've seen from the center position. So I like him at the number four slot. And number five, I really can't decide here. I like your Colin Sexton pick. That was very solid, and I also agree that he's going to be higher than Trey Young. He should be a higher pick than Trey Young. I just think he has more potential for me, and that size can really hurt Trey Young at the next level. So I'd have to say uh, either Colin Sexton or Wendell Carter from Duke. I think both of them are pretty good picks for the top five, but uh, I guess I kind of gave you six, but that would be my top five for the draft for now.
Yeah, that I mean, people might be listening to this and think we're crazy, but neither of us mentioned Luka Doncic, or however you say his name, the dude from wherever
Yep.
overseas. I mean, he could be a great player, I know, but I don't know, just something about. I mean, people, if you're gonna give flack to Lamelo Ball and LiAngelo Ball for playing overseas, then you have to kind of give a little bit of flack to some of these dudes that are playing
Yep.
overseas. I mean, you've seen guys like Porzingis obviously come over, and I mean, he's just been really good. But too many times I've seen, especially out of these guards, you've seen
Yeah.
kind of these guards from overseas. It just doesn't transition quite as well. I mean, you can give me your thoughts on him. I haven't seen as much about him. I mean, I've read about him and stuff, and I've never seen him play, obviously, because he plays overseas. But I just don't think he's there yet. And what I've seen from the past, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't repeat itself. I don't think he's going to be quite as good as everyone thinks. But I mean, what are your opinions?
Yeah, I've tried watching a few highlights and things from him. I spent a few nights just trying to research, make sure I understand this guy a little bit because like you said, overseas players are just so hard to gauge. I mean, all from the reports I've seen from him, the competition he's playing is better than really any other guard that we've seen come out of the EuroLeague. I mean, he plays better competition. He's so young and he's dominating these guys. But from what I've seen, I mean, his outside shooting just isn't that reliable. And in the NBA, adjusting to that speed and that different gameplay is going to be tough. And if he can't rely on a jump shot, maybe they pack the paint, maybe they just lay off of him a little bit. If he can't prove that jump shot, I think it's going to be tough for him to really adjust. And I didn't really see too much explosiveness. I didn't see him going out there just flying by guys, jumping over them, dunking like crazy. He can obviously throw it down, but I mean, what NBA player really can't? You know, it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be a tough transition. If he ends up doing well, then I'll go ahead and eat my words, but that's just a tough pick for me in the top 5, just especially if it's a team that really, really, really relies on that franchise player. That's just so hard for me to be on board with a player like that.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, maybe he turns out to be something maybe he is good. Maybe he's just going to be a solid role player, which he definitely could be, but he's not someone I'm going to say, I'm in the top 5. I got to go with this dude, build my team around him. I mean, and maybe these top 5 teams out of the top picks are looking at him and saying he could be that guy. And maybe he will be. I'm not quite sure. I mean, I haven't seen him a whole lot, so well, I guess we'll have to wait and see. I don't really know. But this is going to head us into our new segment we have. We've talked about this a little bit. Be a GM segment. We're just going to take over a team, decide what we're going to do in the offseason, what they should do in the future. It's obviously probably not what they're going to do, but what we think is the best possible route for them to go in. So we gave each other a couple of teams. Let's start in the West with our teams. We each gave each other one from the West, one from the East. I gave you the Oklahoma City Thunder, and that's why I've been talking about how you'll talk about them in the future. Why don't you explain kind of where they're at and where you think they're going to go?
I just wanted to say I'm really excited for this segment. I just think it's going to be a fun one. It's so interesting to look at some of these perspectives. There are so many different routes you can take, and it's just interesting to get an opinion on where you want to go. Some people will obviously view the team differently, whether you want to wrap your team around shooting or defense, however you want to do it. I just think that's interesting. So just to get started with the Thunder, for all intents and purposes, I'm just going to go ahead and assume Paul George is not coming back and Melo is. He will accept that player option, go ahead and come back. So I think just to start off, I think their starting lineup now would be Westbrook at the point guard, probably Abrinas at the 2. Roberson does come back, which is a huge addition. Whether he's great on offense or not, that's a great defensive addition. So I'd probably play him at the 3. Jeremy Grant at the 4 and Steven Adams at the 5. So I personally think Melo should play on the bench. He's been so outspoken about not playing on the bench, but if you're going to come in and make that kind of money and essentially screw the team over, not give us the offensive output that you're trying to play for, I can't stand to keep him on the starting lineup. If he starts playing well, maybe he earns a spot in the starting lineup or leads the second team on offense. But either way, I think you got to have a team first mentality, and he really hasn't done that. So I think he'd have to earn a spot in the starting lineup. They don't really have any first-round draft picks. They traded their first-round draft pick this year away to the Timberwolves in a trade for Enes Kanter and Rubio. So that puts them in a really tough position. They really don't have a lot. Their offense, I think, will be just fine with Westbrook leading the charge, but they're going to need some defense. And they have quite a few expiring contracts this year. I think Melo, like I mentioned, he has about $28 million, I believe, on his contract, and that's a tough swallow. But Paul George is making about $22 million, so that leaves you a little bit of cap space for free agency. They're not going to be able to go out and I don't think it's a situation where they need to go out and try to sign a massive guy. I think here rely on Westbrook, surround him with players, decent role players, above average players. I think second round they have 2, maybe 3 draft picks, so maybe take a long shot on a guy that maybe he'll pan out, but I don't see that happening very likely. So if they want to go after a few free agents, I think they should get a couple players like maybe Avery Bradley, pretty decent defender, can play on the perimeter very well, and that's something they're going to need. I think they're going to need a lot of defense coming in, specifically from the forward spot, but Avery Bradley's a good guard sitting next to Westbrook on the defensive end. He can guard mainly the best player on the other team. Someone like Bellinelli wouldn't be too bad, or Wayne Ellington, just a couple shooters on the wing, like I mentioned earlier. Jamal Crawford did decline his player option. He's going to be pretty old. He's probably not going to be demanding a ton of money. And whether he still can sit in that 6-man spot or maybe put him in the starting position, whatever works best for the Thunder, I think he can provide some much-needed offense still, no matter his age. I think somebody like Luke Richard Mbamute, if he isn't able to be re-signed by Houston, I think that'd be a good addition to their forward spot. He can provide some much-needed defense, hit the three every now and then, just a role player. He plays within his role. He does it really well in Houston now. So if he's able to get into free agency, I don't think that'd be a too bad of a pickup for him. And I think Jeremy Grant, Raymond Felton, Corey Brewer, and Josh Hustis look like they're the expiring contracts this year. So I think Jeremy Grant's one you have to sign back. He really improved this year, whether it's on offense and defense, especially defense. He's just so long, so big. I think he's going to be vital to their team this year, especially with Paul George leaving. So I think Jeremy Grant needs to be re-signed. He needs to be a priority. Probably will not be asking for a ton of money, but I think you pay him quite a bit, or at least a little bit of what he's asking for. That's a good pickup. Corey Brewer, he's kind of iffy. I think depending on what they do in free agency, they don't have a lot of money. And I think this year is going to be a situation where it's just kind of a wait and see. I don't think you're going to be going for the title. I don't think anyone's going to expect that. I think the players are obviously going to be talking about it. They're never going to just defer us an entire season, especially before it starts. But especially in the West, tough conference, I don't see him really competing that much. So I think you just need to build up the role players here. Try to get as many as you can with the money that's remaining. So I guess we'll see what happens. But I think a few of those free agents that they could get would be a good choice. Somebody like Mario Hezonja, if he's able to get out of Orlando, he kind of came on towards the end of the season, so he can shoot the three a little bit. He doesn't play great defense, but that's a bench role offensive spark that they could really use. So a few of those free agents they can get for cheap that could really boost their bench and their depth a little bit, because their depth is really lacking. And I think that's the best way to go. Shooting, defense, and depth. Those are the needs this year.
Yeah, I really like the Avery Bradley. I think that kind of would change their identity a little bit. Right now, you just think of him as a Russ Westbrook kind of team, and I think Avery Bradley goes in there and helps Westbrook, but not only helps him, but it helps him, especially on defensive end, being able to guard the best player. It also provide maybe kind of like a 3-and-D type role, and he also expands his game beyond that. So I think he's very solid. But like you said, this could be an ugly year. A lot of things could happen, but it also could be a decent year where, obviously, like you said, they're not going to be competing for a championship, but I think they could be right in the middle of the pack again. But the West is so good, you just are never quite sure. So I guess.
What do you think about the Jazz this year? What do you think?
I guess I'll take me the Jazz, but the Jazz, they have. I mean, obviously, getting past Oklahoma State in the first round, I never would have expected that, especially going into this year. And especially after you lose Gordon Hayward, wouldn't have expected that whatsoever. But honestly, the Jazz don't have a lot of room to do a whole lot, but they also don't really know if they need to do a whole lot. Right now, you have Gobert easily making the most money, and obviously he's just a force on the defensive end. When he's healthy, he's really good, a huge presence. But they haven't in a contract through 2021. He needs to stay healthy, obviously, but that's uncontrollable. He had for like $90 million through 2020 to 2021. So kind of a big contract, and you're going to have to roll with him. I mean, he's still young. It's not like he's getting up there in age. It's just going to grow. It's a contract that's going to grow old. I mean, I think he's a solid part of your defense, and that Utah identity is kind of based on defense. So that's really the route that you kind of have to go with this team. And having Gobert is huge. And then you make that move for Ricky Rubio, and he's making $30 million guaranteed through. He's got this year and next year for $30 million guaranteed. So you can't really do a whole lot about that. Rubio, he's kind of came on in the playoffs a little bit, but I never really liked Rubio, especially Minnesota. He kind of bust. He came over here, and he's been playing decent with the Jazz. And like I said, they kind of just need that point guard that's just solid, especially if you have someone like Donovan Mitchell scoring all the points. You'll need Rubio to come in and average 20 plus for you. Obviously, that'd be nice, but you just need to be solid, run the show, play some defense, and just be an overall solid guard. But then you have this Joe Ingles dude, this trash talker that's I've heard endlessly about in the playoffs. He's making quite a bit of money too. He's making up to about 40 mil or 50 mil through, also the same as Gobert, through 2020 and 2021. He's getting about 50 guaranteed, which is not really what I expected from this guy, because I think of him as just a 3-and-D straight kind of dude, but he's played really good defense and he's kind of expanded his offensive game. I just don't see him as like an athletic force or a dude that can really take over a game. I feel like if you needed to stop Joe Ingles, you could stop Joe Ingles, but I don't know. Apparently, he's this big trash talker and is just locking down some dudes. So I'm not really sure. Maybe that's a really good contract, but you're gonna have to stick with him. You have him signed for that much through that long. And I mean, if your identity is defense, he's not too bad at that. He's shown that pretty well. And he's played pretty solid for him. But then you also pick up Jay Crowder in the trade, and I think he has a solid contract. He's only making about $9 million a year for the next 3 years, which is a pretty decent contract for a dude that is kind of fits the mold of these other guys. He's a guy that can knock down a three, kind of expand his offensive game. He played well for Boston. He's kind of the same player for Boston as he is for Utah. Just knows his role, kind of can do what he can on offense, but then just plays really good defense. Kind of thought that was what the Cavs needed out of him, was to just do what he did on offense, but really be that defensive presence. And then obviously things happened in Cleveland where he never really did that. Maybe he didn't really like his role in Cleveland and wanted to expand his role. But he's had a few good games in the playoffs, and you've seen him play well with Utah, so he's going to be there for a while. I don't see the Jazz making any crazy moves here. I think they're going to stay the same few guys, but right now I think the biggest part of the Utah Jazz is you really got to take advantage of Donovan Mitchell's. I mean, I wouldn't say it's low, but his low rookie salary. I mean, in the NBA now, being a lottery pick, you still make quite a bit of money, but once Donovan Mitchell becomes that free agent, you know you're going to have to pay him because he's proved this year that, I mean, he's up there for Rookie of the Year. It's going to go to Ben Simmons. I mean, at least it should. Whether you think he should be a rookie or not, if he's considered a rookie, he's Rookie of the Year. But Donovan Mitchell clearly shown he can score the ball, and he's your leading scorer. You have to take advantage of this low contract that he has right now as a rookie. But so that'll leave you with Rubio at the point. You got Mitchell at the 2, and then you can play Ingles at the 3 or Crowder, whichever way you want to go. Ingles probably starting, Crowder coming off the bench, or maybe Crowder will move to the 4 and then Gobert at the 5. But there's only 2 people you really have to make decisions on in the offseason as expiring contracts, only 2 important ones at least. You got Derek Favors right now, the 4-man. I mean, I think when they drafted him, they thought he was going to be a little more, but I mean, he hasn't been awful by any means. He's just a solid dude like the rest of them, a 4-man, rebounds the ball, can hit a mid-range jumper, can score it a little bit. And, I mean, you have to make a decision. If you have a guy you're looking at in free agency that you like, you go get him, I think. I don't think you really are forced to hang on to Derek Favors, but I'm not quite sure how many really just good options there are, role players. I mean, obviously you have LeBron that could decline his contract and a few other dudes that are way up there as really good, but you're not going to get any of those dudes in Utah. So I think maybe bringing Favors back for maybe a 2-year deal, maybe a 3-year deal. He's still kind of young, could progress a little bit more, but I think he's just a solid 4-man that you bring back. He's one of the important contracts. But then the other one that's up in the air and is even more up in the air after the Game 4 in the playoffs is Dante Exum. I mean, you've seen flashes of his potential, especially in this playoff series when he's had to take over for Ricky Rubio. You've seen what he could be, and I think that's just what Utah people have really seen out of him. You've seen what he could be, and you've seen flashes of it, but then you've also seen a bust, a dude that hasn't been up to anything that you really dreamt of when you drafted him. I mean, he's a huge, huge point guard. He's got the size to play. I mean, he's developing a jumper, and obviously that could go a huge way. But I mean, he's athletic, but so many of these injuries that he's getting is keeping him from having the athleticism and really being able to use his huge size at the point guard position. So I think they bring him back just because they've seen what he could be, and maybe even if he doesn't turn out what he could be, he can still be a solid role player. But just the injury history, which you can't control, is just something that's definitely up in the air a little bit. And I personally would bring him back just because of what I saw in the playoff series. And I mean, he's gotten some decent experience, but I'm not quite sure. I mean, he hurt himself in the Game 4, so not quite sure what he's looking at in the future for injury-wise, but you got to stay healthy, got to be on the court to earn any type of contract. So that's basically what I see for their future. Not going to go get anything else. Probably staying with the same identity. You just really have to take advantage and progress Donovan Mitchell as he keeps getting older, and he's probably going to be in Utah a very long time. But that being said, if he takes some money and he's going to want some money, then you're going to be a little bit more restricted there. So that's just basically what I see from the Utah Jazz. But that's the West for us. We got 2 teams this week. If there's any teams that you guys want to hear us talk about, put 2 in the comment section or something like that. Just let us know from the West, and you can also give us 2 from the East. But that's going to move us on to the East. I believe I gave you the New York Knicks, which is could be kind of a crazy. I mean, you've talked about Melo. He's the last person that's been kind of relevant other than Kristaps Porzingis over there. So why don't you tell us about the Knicks?
Yeah, that's it was tough to look at this, look at all of the salaries that the Knicks have to look to absorb. I mean, the Joakim Noah, $18.5 million a year. That's just absolutely absurd, and they have him through 2020. 2019, 2020, so they're stuck with him. I don't see anyone absorbing a contract like that through a trade, and I mean they don't even really have a lot of depth, so it's not like they buy him out and just kind of eat the contract and just buy him out and just say we'll start anew, grab someone else. Kyle O'Quinn has a player option this year, and I don't think he's too bad. But one of the big signings or one of the big choices that we have in the offseason here is going to be Enes Kanter. He's going to be making just a little over 18 million, 18.6 or so. But he does have a player option for 2018, 2019, so it'll be interesting to see what he does there. I think he ultimately does accept that player option, knowing he's going to be the man this year in New York. Maybe they don't end up – I can't imagine them doing very well or playoff type play, but he's going to be the man there, especially the to be determined return of Porzingis. I mean, that really their chances, but they've got quite a few expiring contracts here. It looks like they got a few: Michael Beasley, Jarrett Jack, we got Trey Burke, and looks like Ramon Sessions as well. So if they can keep Tim Hardaway, looks like they have him through 2020, 21. He's going to be an expensive buy as well. So I think you got to use him as much as you can. You can't eat up 2 big contracts like that with not a lot of contribution. So I think a lot of their trouble starts at the 3, the small forward position. I think they've had to play a few undersized guys there at the small forward, like Courtney Lee. I just don't like that. I think you gotta address this in the draft. Obviously, the lottery comes up, and we don't know what they're going to be picking, but it's going to be anywhere from 9 to 11. So I think you got to go someone like Mikal Bridges from Nova. I think that's a perfect position for the New York Knicks. He's not going to be giving you 20 a night or anything, but he's a 3-and-D player specifically. I mean, that fits the role very well for what the Knicks are looking for. And whether Knicks fans are going to agree with this, if any are listening at this point, I think you got to re-sign Trey Burke. I think you got to re-sign Michael Beasley. And I think you got to do whatever you can to get Kyle O'Quinn back with that player option. A lot of people liked Burke at the end of the season. He really showed out as that 6th man, put a lot of offensive output for that second team. But I do think starting the season, I think you got to start Frank Ntilikina. I apologize if I actually butchered that last name, but I think he needs to start. I think he's not going to give you the offense that Trey Burke needs, but Trey Burke, I think that offensive output that he gives on the second team is more valuable than the defense Frank brings for that second team. I just think that Frank Ntilikina, I think you really let him develop there on the first team. He's already a pretty decent defender. He's pretty long. He's shown flashes of offense. I can't depend on that this year, but I think you just got to let him develop. Be patient with him. That's one thing that's really going to hurt him, is you just continue to push him and make him way over his head in terms of offense. So I think you got to start him, keep Trey Burke on the bench, but he's not going to be asking for a lot. I mean, Trey Burke had a good season, but nobody's going to be out here signing him for 18, 20 million next year. So I think he wasn't making too much as it was. I don't even know if it was $1 million to start this year. So I think you re-sign him, keep him on the bench. So we'll have Frank at the point guard position. Tim Hardaway needs to start at the 2. Hopefully you're able to get Mikal Bridges in the draft. If not, I'm sure there are other players that you can get there. Miles Bridges, I'm sure, will be there as well. Someone like Kevin Knox might be able to play there from Kentucky. They have some options there. I think that's the one position they have to absolutely address in the draft. They have a few players like Lance Thomas. They can play at the 4. That's just they don't have a lot of money. Joakim Noah is eating up a lot of that cap space. So I think they got to be patient with Porzingis. He's obviously the franchise piece. Don't rush him back too quickly, because they're not making the playoffs this year. Let's just be honest. They're not going to be, even if they make a magical run in the playoffs. They're not matching up well with anybody. They're not going to be making a run or anything. One of the big problems that I'm seeing with this team is they got a lot of point guards that really aren't going to be playing. I mean, their skill sets are very similar. Someone like Manu Moutier, I just don't see how he fits in with the team very well. I think if you're able to trade him for maybe a few picks or even just a backup three that you can put in for depth, I think that's something you got to do. If they end up keeping him, it really isn't that big of a deal. He really isn't even making too much money. He's probably making about 3-4 million this year, so it's not like he's hurting your cap space. He'll give you a little bit of production, but nothing too crazy. Ron Baker's got a player option. He's not going to be a super important piece, but if you can get him back, all of the depth helps. So I think this is going to be a situation where they just kind of wait it out, be patient with Porzingis, bring him back whenever he's ready. Do not rush him back, especially with an ACL injury like that. You gotta be patient with it. Just a few free agents I can see him getting. Maybe someone like Trevor Ariza, again, if he's able to get out of Houston. I think that's someone that Houston ends up signing, but that's a player that fits really well in what they're looking to do. He brings that veteran leadership as well. And someone like Kyle Anderson from the Spurs. He was a restricted free agent, so we'll see if the Spurs end up trying to get him back, signing an offer sheet, keeping him there. But if you're able to snag him out of there, someone who can play the 3 and the 4, I think that's a perfect fit for their offense. So I think not a lot of options here in New York. Again, unfortunately it's going to be another tough season for the Knicks. Hopefully they're able to get James Dolan out of there, but that's strictly my opinion. Fizdale will do well with the players the past few years with Phil Jackson out there trying to shove the triangle down their throat and Jeff Hornacek not having much luck with the players. I think this is the one option for stability that they're really looking for, and I think that's going to benefit them as well. Not taking them to the playoffs like I mentioned, but they don't have a lot of options. I think they got to re-sign Michael Beasley and Trey Burke. Those are the two players that I think you really got to re-sign. Michael Beasley's got to have somebody that can play the 4 while Porzingis is out. So I like that pick a lot. Besides that, I don't really see a whole lot that the Knicks are going to be able to do. Look for that small forward in the draft and just try to re-sign a few players. Hopefully Enes Kanter accepts that player option. If he declines that player option, you got to try to go pick in free agency. But I don't know anyone that's coming to that dumpster fire in New York. So that's what I'm seeing at the Knicks for now.
That's interesting because I think Cantor. I mean, you have to get him back, but I would not be surprised at all if Cantor decides he wants to go. He just plays OKC, and Russ could definitely see him saying, "I don't want to be here," and he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just interesting. I don't know. The Knicks are kind of in a terrible spot, and the one dude that's kind of bringing you, I guess I could say, revenue because you're not really competing is probably Porzingis, and him going to be out for half the year, all the year, everything. Which I mean, maybe could be good. Maybe find out some more about some guys while Porzingis is out. I'm not really sure, but that's an interesting spot that the Knicks are in right now, and not one when you got rid of Melo. Once you got rid of Melo, you kind of knew you were going to go there, but not one that you definitely do not want to be in, especially in New York. You do not want to be that bad, and not even people not enjoy watching you whatsoever.
They got Porzingis making about 6 million until 2021. So, and you're definitely gonna have to give him the max, whether it's super max at that point. Who knows down the line, but they have options until then. So I think they just need to ride the ship. Hopefully they don't have to pay Enes Kanter a massive contract in 2019, 2020, because that's gonna put them in another tough position. But yeah, I think it's wait and see. Get those young guys in there, develop them, and look for the future here. And what are we seeing from the Detroit Pistons this year? I know you looked at them briefly or pretty in depth.
Pistons, I have in just I would say personally a terrible position. I mean, it depends, I guess, how you see Blake Griffin, Andre Drummond working out because right now you got Blake making 132 million guaranteed through 2021 to 2022. So if he doesn't work out, that's your team. That's a lot of money. Not only do you have him making that, but you got a big man next to him and Drummond making 76 mil guaranteed through 2020, 2021. So right there is mostly your team. And I mean, you saw flashes of when they first got together that they played well together, but they definitely wanted to make a run just to get into the playoffs and try to ride out those two bigs, maybe dominating somewhere in the playoffs. I mean, the East, obviously, if you have a few good players, you can make a run, and I think that's kind of what they wanted to do with Blake and Drummond, but that didn't pan out. And I mean, I don't know how much you can trust Blake in big scenarios, and I don't know, Drummond has barely been there, so I'm not quite sure if that was ever going to pan out anyway. But you have those two guys making a ton of money, but they're going to be there. Those are some solid players, obviously, whether they come through big or not, or deserve that much money. They're good players. Blake's a good player. Drummond's a beast down in the post. He can finish anything by the rim, and he just rebounds just about everything. And Blake can do a lot for you. So I mean, I'm not going to go and say that they're awful players and you got to get rid of them. But I mean, that
Except
much
in the fourth
money.
quarter.
That's true. Blake doesn't do anything in the fourth quarter except for run point and do a fadeaway jumper from 30 feet out. But that being said, their point guard right now, I also don't agree with Reggie Jackson. Reggie Jackson, I don't know. He hasn't been really that healthy, and I don't know if he's the right guy to play next to those two. I mean, I feel like Reggie Jackson kind of wants to get the ball, get into some pick and roll, kind of run the show. But Blake wants the ball a lot. He wants to bring it up sometimes once he gets the rebound. He wants to go coast to coast. He wants to catch in the post and go to work, and so does Drummond. So I'm not sure Reggie Jackson's a guy, but he's also really athletic and could play alongside those guys. So I could see it both ways, but I'm not really sure he's the one you want at point. And there's some other options that they might end up getting, that they could end up getting, but they'd have to kind of luck out and stuff. But that'll be later. But right now they have to figure out how to draft some decent dudes here. I mean, Stanley Johnson. I mean, he could progress into a guy that can be dominant, because I mean he's athletic and maybe not dominant, but just solid. I mean, that's really what I think they want from him. I mean, he could progress well, but I don't think he's really where they thought he was going to be. He needs to definitely keep playing and play alongside those two. You don't have to be a dude that goes in and scores 20 a night. You just have to be a solid guy out there. But alongside him, Luke Kennard, I think they wanted to be a knockdown shooter, which still could be. I'm only giving him 1 year, but I don't know how much he played this year, and I'm not really sure how great he could be. I kind of questioned it a little bit because, I mean, he could shoot the jumper at Duke, but I mean, he's not just this overpowering big guard that can do a whole lot. I mean, he's got the lefty stroke. It looks good. And, I mean, if he knocks down jumpers, that's probably really all you need from him playing alongside the two bigs. So, I mean, he could do that. But I feel like they need to make some serious changes, but you can't really do a whole lot when you have those kind of contracts on your team. It's just not going to work out. And, I mean, they're there for I mean, Drummond's there 2020 to 2021, and Blake is 1 year after that. So you're stuck with them. So you have to figure out something to do alongside them. That start next year, you really have to hope that you got Reggie Jackson, Luke Kennard, Stanley Johnson, and then Blake and Drummond. You have to hope that they kind of click together, and obviously got to give them time. I mean, Blake and Drummond, they both at times, they clicked when they first started out playing, and hopefully you see that again. But I mean, you got a good shot at the playoffs no matter what when you got two dominant guys like that in the East. So, I mean, if that's all they're really looking for, if they think they can get in, and then from there they have a chance, I'm not sure. And in the West, it's a different story. If you're the 8 seed, you're getting knocked in the first round. You're doing nothing. But in the East, I mean, you got a chance if you make the playoffs. So maybe that's what they're looking for. I think they need to sign a guard definitely in the offseason and continue to develop Stanley Johnson, like I said. If next year doesn't start well, I mean, maybe you want to trade somebody, maybe you want to trade Drummond, but that's not even probably your best option unless you get some serious assets. But you have to do something through the free agency, because you lose your next draft picks going and trading for Blake Griffin. So unless you make some more serious trades and you go and get some draft picks here, then you got to do everything through limited money in free agency, which is not where you want to be. So you got these two guys and you ride them out, I guess. But however, if you have these guys, Drummond's only 24 and Blake Griffin's only 29. So you're not here for a 1 year kind of deal. I mean, they both want to win, so they're kind of here for get it done this year, or maybe they're gone, or maybe they're going to try to force their way out. But if you're looking at it from a management perspective, you have Johnson, who's young, Kennard, who's young, Drummond's young, Blake's 29, but I mean, he's had a few injuries, so maybe you see him as getting up there, but I don't know. they're still pretty young if you look at it from a management perspective. A couple of guys I could see them definitely going getting, and obviously these guys could go back to their team, or maybe they do leave and look for better roles. I think Will Barton from the Nuggets could be very solid for them, just a wing kind of scorer, and maybe you don't want to ruin the development of Kennard and Johnson, but I think he could be out there and definitely do some. And then here's two guys that are former from Detroit, so you're probably not going to get them, but I feel like they'd be good fits. Is one guy you brought up earlier, Avery Bradley. I just think a 3-and-D type of dude for this team, but he's not going to come back to Detroit, and it'd be some dude that you'd want, but he's not going to come back after you just traded him. Same with Caldwell Pope. I feel like you could get him as a shooter, but he's probably not going to come back to Detroit either. So getting rid of those guys kind of just, I mean, they're the top free agents out there that you might want to get, and they're not going to come back to Detroit after you get rid of them like that. But then another dude, if he leaves, I think is probably the best bet for Blake and Drummond. You saw him play with Boogie Cousins and Brow. I think Rajon Rondo probably doesn't want to go to Detroit, but I mean, he went to New Orleans, so maybe he will go somewhere like that. But I think he could be really good next to these two guys, just a dude that is able to assist anything and everything that's out there. But the Brow, I'm sure, loves playing with him, as you see in the playoffs with 20-plus assists at times. And Boogie Cousins, I'm sure, love to play with him. So I'm not sure if Rondo will leave, but if he does, these are all just, if they do, then I think you got to get Rondo to play with Blake Griffin in a pick and roll, same with Drummond, and get them involved. And then once it comes to the playoff time, then he kind of knows what he's doing and can maybe help the others through it. But that's where I see it. The Pistons kind of in a terrible spot, but the two bigs could take you places, and maybe they figure it out. And maybe Van Gundy can do some magic over there. I'm not really sure. We'll have to see. There's no more Hito Turkoglu over there, so he didn't even play for them. He just destroyed them. So, but that's about the Pistons, and that's just what I see. So, I mean, that's all I gotta say about the NBA. I mean, we spent a lot of time on it. I don't know if you have anything else to say about them. So,
I that Will Barton. The only bad thing about that is he declined pretty big content to start the season. I like him at the spot. I think he can play six, be in the starting lineup. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes in the off. I was looking for.
Yeah, so that's all I got for the NBA. I mean, we can talk a little bit about football now. I don't know if you want to talk about a little bit about something's happening in the college football with UCF. I don't know if you want to dive into that real fast.
Yeah, just real quick. I just needed to get it off my chest. This is just something that's been bothering me for a while. I'm a Nebraska fan, so obviously I enjoy Scott Frost, and I don't have any hate towards UCF, especially the team. I think they had a magical season, something I'm not sure a lot of teams can recreate. But I just don't understand what all of these UCF fans are trying to accomplish. I mean, they just seem so entitled to me. I just don't understand it. I mean, they had a great season. Nobody takes that away from them. But the fact that they're calling themselves champions, I understand why they're doing it. They were the only undefeated team. They beat Auburn, which beat the two teams in the playoff. But there's a massive difference between playing one game against a team you have, like a month and a little couple weeks to prepare for a bowl game, especially a big bowl game. It's just without having to go through a big grind of the Power 5 conferences, without having to deal with all of those stellar teams. They played a few decent teams in their conference. I mean, they played teams like Memphis, and they're not Big 10, Big 12 caliber teams, but I mean, they're decent teams, and having to deal with that type of conference gives them an advantage, really. Just easy to say. I mean, they didn't schedule a great out of conference schedule. I mean, I think they played Austin P and FIU or FAU. I can't remember specifically, but it was nobody really that stellar. So I just don't understand why they're so against not being in the playoff. I mean, they were never really close in the rankings, and the committee's been very clear about the scheduling being an important issue with them making the playoff, and they just seem like they deserve so much more than they really do. It's just they call themselves national championships or national champions, claim a championship, that's fine, but it's just there's just a big difference between winning a game that you have a while to prepare for rather than playing two games in the playoff and winning both against stellar competition. It's aggravating to me, and it's something I deal with almost on a daily basis, seeing these guys it's just a weird sense of entitlement. Deserve to be national champions, then do it again. I don't expect them to get an undefeated season again. That's not what I'm saying. But play well again, earn your right to be in the playoffs, schedule non-conference teams. That'll boost your resume. I mean, these are things that you can control, and they can't control their conference, but do the things that you can control. Get yourself back into the talk and back into contention, and prove that you deserve to be there, rather than telling everybody you should be there. That's really the only issue I have.
Yeah, that's kind of where I see it. I mean, obviously they aren't national champs because you didn't go through those top teams that played out for the national championship, whether you think you deserved it or not. But I think if you really want to consider yourself national champions, then go out. It's going to be tough, but go out and keep your name out there. You can't just have this one crazy year, one underdog year. If you really think you deserve to be up there with the top names like Alabama and Ohio State and everybody, then you have to consistently be up there. Maybe one down year that here and there, like everyone has, but you can't just have one solid year where you play a bunch of just, I don't want to say poor teams, but maybe average, above average teams, and then win a bowl game and then consider yourself national champions. I mean, if you're telling me that you go undefeated 3 straight years and they're never going to put you in the college football playoff, then maybe you have some sort of argument. But if you're going to have one crazy year where you didn't even play like Alabama or Ohio State, like I said, just some of the top teams, then you shouldn't have much argument there. So glad you were able to get that one off your chest.
It's been weighing on me. I apologize if there are any offended UCF fans, but I don't really care. I'm willing to talk about it because they have one argument. The one argument they have is being undefeated in the poll. They go by some matrix poll that graded them as number 1, but that's the poll that went into the BCS system, which was clearly flawed and the reason we're in the playoff anyways. So it's just a lot of entitlement. And anyways, we're past that. But I know you got something to say about Ben Roethlisberger. I know you've been holding that one back, and I'm ready to hear it. I'm sure the listeners are as well.
May have some very aggravated fans out here, UCF and Pittsburgh. Could be a little rough in the audience, but I just want to say this right away. If Ben Roethlisberger didn't say anything from the start, I would not be saying this. Tom Brady could have all the right to be mad if they drafted QB, if they traded up and got Baker Mayfield. I would not be arguing this. But let's just say that Big Ben, who had every other year for the past, 4 years, 5 years, has said that he's considered retirement, which if you think about it from a management perspective, if he thinks about he's retiring, what are you going to do? You got maybe an old backup QB, or right now I think they have Josh Dobbs maybe as a backup QB, and you've been talking about retirement, and you've been threatening to retire, especially by the way you guys have been playing. And I mean, you're playing with the best running back probably in the league in Le'Veon Bell and the best wide receiver Antonio Brown. So first off, the talk of retirement in that situation is already idiotic. But if you're going to threaten to retire over and over again, then don't get mad when your team drafts a QB in the second or third round, even though they trade up early in the round. Here is the exact quote from Big Ben. He said, "I was surprised when they took a quarterback because I thought that maybe in the third round, you can get some really good football players that can help this team now." Roethlisberger said, "Nothing against Mason. I think he's a great football player. I don't know him personally, but you get the idea. He doesn't like to pick in the early third round, which makes no sense. And I get it if they draft a quarterback in the first round, then that's their future. But in the third round, you're probably not getting the dude anyway, even if he is a skill position type of dude, a dude that's in the secondary. Early third round is probably a guy that you have maybe not as much of an experiment with, but he's probably not a day one starter, especially in the Pittsburgh Steelers when you just made the playoffs. So the fact that you're doing somebody that's not there to win now or whatever with quarterback, and you already took a shot at him when he said something, we'll have to see where he ends up on the depth chart or something, but you don't think he helps us win now. First off, he's going to be your second string quarterback. Josh Dobbs is not going to be your second string quarterback, and you considering retirement and throwing 5 interceptions against the Jacksonville Jaguars gives me all the reason to believe that you should get Mason Rudolph in the third round. So there's that. Big Ben, consider retirement again this year. I don't really care. Gonna get beat by the Patriots anyway. Let's move on.
That was some passion. That was some passion in that argument.
Just aggravating.
I loved it.
All right, so we have a few more things we're gonna talk about. Probably stick in the NFL before we wrap up the episode. I just want to hear your thoughts right away on the Matt Ryan contract.
I don't mind it. I they have a great offense going for him, and obviously they were set to win the Super Bowl before the epic collapse. But he's been about as consistent as you can be in the NFL. He plays well in the elements. The only thing that they had against him was that he didn't play well in the postseason, and he proved them wrong last year, a couple of years ago. He's really I mean it's I don't enjoy a lot of the fully guaranteed contracts. I know this one was, I think it was 105 years, 150 mil, and I think he had 100 million guarantee. So I don't like the full guarantee. So I like it for both parties here. I like Matt Ryan. He's consistent, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Yeah, I have no qualms with this one.
Yeah, I'd also agree with that. I mean, I feel like the only argument you could put against him is he couldn't finish out the Super Bowl, but I mean, some of that is definitely coaching. I mean, you got to put him in the
Mm-hmm.
right spot there in that Super Bowl. But uh, like you said, he proved himself in that playoff, and he's definitely a good quarterback at an MVP type year 2 years ago. And I mean, if you sign him for this long and you put him around weapons like Julio and you draft Calvin Ridley, I mean, might as well sign him and play him with these guys and just keep your quarterback. I mean, to survive in this league, you got to have a quarterback, and he's definitely a solid one. Definitely one of the best out there. So
Mm-hmm.
hopefully, I mean, for the Falcons' sake, I mean, bring them back to where they were and maybe finish out a Super Bowl. But I mean, stay healthy, get good coaching. I mean, like you said, they got rid of their offense coordinator. Obviously, had to take over somewhere else when you have a year like that. So I mean, he's just going to continue to develop with his new guys. But then I'll take us probably our last topic, Jason Witten, Monday Night Football job. I mean, this one isn't a very big topic, but it just goes along with the NFL. Jason Witten signs a deal to go to Monday Night Football. And I mean, I don't know if you, I mean, I personally am okay with him going because Jason Witten's probably going to go. I mean, he already has a Hall of Fame type resume as a tight end. He's probably going to make the Hall of Fame. The only problem that I feel like people have with this is because maybe he'd have a chance to. I mean, he hasn't won a ring, so maybe that's what he wants to do. What are your opinions on that? You think he should have stayed for the ring, or are you all right with him leaving?
No, he's look at what he played, like 16 years in the NFL. I have no problem with this at all. I mean, I'm pretty sure Monday Night Football was paying him pretty well for this as well. So he's beat up. He's going to get you, the yards you need on third down, third and short. But he's not going to be a guy that's going to be throwing vertical shots too, and he's not going to be breaking off 40-yard runs after the catch. I mean, I just think the Cowboys can move past this. I'm not sure it's something where they absolutely need him. The veteran leadership in the locker room is probably the biggest hit more than anything for this. If he's probably beat up at this point, if he thinks he's done, take his mind to Monday Night Football while it's still there. I don't have any problems with this, and I don't see the Cowboys winning a ring in the next 3 years anyways. So I don't mind this at all. I think Monday Night Football can really benefit from him. But yeah, I have no problems with this at all.
Yeah, no problems either. Going back to once he already considered retirement, I mean, like they said, once you already are thinking about it, you're basically retired. So
Yep.
I think after he thought about it, he knew he was leaving. I mean, he considered going back, so he says, but maybe he's just trying to make Jerry Jones happy. I'm not sure, but I think that was a good decision going. I mean, he's probably going to make the same, if not more money being that Monday Night
Yep.
Football dude, but I think it might be tough for him because I feel like a lot of professional players retire. They take a couple of years, kind of like learn about the analyst job because you really just can't jump right into it that big of a scene and just be naturally
Yep.
good at it unless you're Tony Romo. Apparently, I don't know how that happened, but that definitely did. But I mean, maybe he could have benefited from being somewhere with Dallas for a year or two and then heading to Monday Night Football, but that position wasn't going to be open any longer. So probably good that he took it. And I mean, I guess we'll see how that pans out. But I mean, that's all I got for the episode. You got anything else you want to
Yep.
talk about?
No, I would just love to hear. I just love to hear from you guys in the comments. Really, any team you guys want us to talk about for that new segment. It was definitely fun to go in depth with this specific team, so we can look towards the off season, look towards the draft. We're definitely going to be bringing the NBA draft, a little bit more once it gets closer. Right now, we can't really do anything, especially without the lottery coming up. So I think it's going to be. We'll talk a little bit more about the draft. NFL's coming up. College football's down the line, which I'm pretty excited for. But we got just about everything going in. We'd love to hear from you guys. Just more opinions to talk about. And yeah, that's about it. That's all I got.
Yeah, that sounds good. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Talked about a lot in this episode. So let us know what you thought, whether you disagree with the Big Ben or UCF rants. I'm not sure. I mean, I'll be happy to argue with you, and I'm sure John will too. But we just, like you said, love to hear from you guys. Just let us know what you'd like to see, what you didn't like. I mean, there's probably a few things that we messed up, and if you want to correct us, I mean, I'm definitely good with it. But that's all we got for this episode. We'll see you guys
Mhm.
next week, and I hope you guys enjoyed.
All right.